Good. This is the first time I've ever done a public speaking thing before, and so it's been a good experience, having fun meeting people in person. I think that's always really nice and something that I missed. Yeah, I feel like in a sense that's why you make art, right? It's like there's a lot of things that we as people we want to express, but oftentimes they get lost in translation through words or in language, and we see those limitations that we face with that. And so art is this expression that allows people to, I believe, communicate, that breaks down these barriers of your identity, or where you're from, who you are, what you know. And it's just about this inner feeling, this mutual understanding that we can all share and appreciate. And so my work is really about that in a sense, and I want to try to find points that seem to have a harder idea, or an identity in a sense, to polarizing thoughts, and then find the nuances and spaces in between that we can all kind of find ourselves landing in. And there's an element of this fluidity of opinions, of different vantage points that give, I think, everyone a open up discussion that's more tolerant to the unknown, to fixed truths. And that's really where I feel a lot of my inspiration stems from, and the work that comes out of it is just a reflection of that train of thought. Because I think it gives us context. It's we experience life and we do see things as maybe in the beginning as a black and white realm, or we see it as something as that's strong and that's weak, or these polarities, and that's how we build relationships to our environment. And so I think by focusing on two ideas, it gives a rather relative boundary that you can express yourselves within a contained chaos, I guess. So that's a space where you can actually find so much richer narratives between two ideas, but also giving yourself this limitation to an extent, so you can express freely within those bounds, to be more concise in terms of what you're trying to say. I am Japanese, but at the same time, I grew up in the States, and so, but my parents were Japanese, and so I grew up in this Asian household, but my childhood, my upbringing, my education was in was in America. And I feel all of these references to Japanese culture really come more from perhaps just values, or what we appreciate in different cultures. And by being able to, easily navigate between the two, but also know that I'm not necessarily from Japan or this Japanese, I don't take on that identity necessarily, but I'm also not just American. It's being Japanese American, you have a lot of, I'd say, flexibility of being able to take in things from one culture, absorb another, that you are taught by your parents, but then also your experiences with your friends is completely different. So you find the right balance that makes you who you are. And I feel by being, my position right now, it's that I find beauty in things that are different, that my parents see it a certain way, or this Japanese culture sees it a certain way in their language or their expression. But then in America, it's packaged or it's delivered in a completely different way. And so when you notice the differences, you then can find this relationship between the two that I find to be, what's more inspirational, rather than it being focused exactly on something to be Japanese or something to be American. I come from a sculptural realm. My background's in industrial design, and so materials have always been something that isn't, materials allow me to express things because I feel that we interact with objects, with textures, with things that all inform, there's this level of perceived value attached to material properties. And this is something that I could explain a little bit in my talk as well, but for me, like plants, it wasn't necessarily so much fixated on the idea that these are flowers. Rather, it's more the plants, the anatomy of it, how it's made in nature, like the biology of it just performed in a way where it allowed me to express what I wanted to express about life and death. And flowers, like a lot of the results in the work, it's not necessarily about looking at the flower so much and about what that is, like the name or like the genus. Rather, it's more each floral scaffold represents this space that is this liminal area between death and rebirth. And that was the two relationships I wanted to discuss with the work. I think these are just more fun. You can actually, you can meet people, and I think that, I feel like I'm so much more active in person than I am online, and I appreciate meeting, putting a face to someone's artwork, or, attaching their personality to their pieces, and expanding outside this digital identity that we have, and especially that's more common today because we don't have these events that happen as much, or we didn't have these events happen that much, and so like to be able to meet people, talk, and like laugh, and actually like become friends and things like that, I think it's really special and actually builds a stronger relationships and friendships.
Absolutely. And anybody in particular you're excited to see?
Today?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm excited to see everyone. I mean, there's not one person, but, it's funny because all of these names I've seen on, like, social media for, like, years now, and I've never talked to them, or, I was, like, maybe, like, too shy to reach out or something like that, and so, but here, we're just all, like, grabbing coffee and all, like, nervous to speak together, and so I think that part's is just really nice. Well, I feel like all of this, I take it a day at a time a lot, and there are projects I'm excited to work on, a lot of new, now that we've been experimenting and all this stuff, like I think everyone is realizing what they value in this technology or what they value in making digital art and what it means to them. And so I'm excited for, everyone to kind of step into their own, like, comfort zone and taking information or just learning about what they value about this space and being authentic to that. And so that's what I'm trying to listen to right now. Is there's a lot of new ways and a lot of new, opinions as to how this space is going to be or what's going to look like in the future. And like those questions I don't really like to ask myself because like so much of this is really just guided by instinct. And I think it's important to not let that get muddled by like, preconceived like notions or projections.